This guy. He's been responsible for the odd genocide or two. This guy. He's been a headmaster. He's been a scientist. He's created abominations. He's tried to overthrow Megatron. He's been described as the most powerful Decepticon superweapon ever created. His list of evil deeds is long. So let's take a trip across the continuities, including Rise of the Beasts, to look at all the ways the universe would have been a much better place if this guy just, I don't know, got a little therapy or took a Xanax or something. So grab a beverage, hit like on the video, and try saying how many skulls could a Scorponok squish if a Scorponok could squish skulls, because he loves squishing them skulls. And let's go all the way back to the beginning to G1, where oddly enough he was created not by the Decepticons, but by the ruler of planet Nebulos, Lord Zarak, and his overlords called the Hive, who were a bunch of green aliens who used machinery and telekinesis to maintain their rule. They took the headmaster process created by Brainstorm, which meant that a human could binary bond with a bot and become the Transformer's head. Then they rebuilt their entire city into a gigantic robot body. Anyway, Zarak wanted to use Scorponok to attain a key to a mysterious plasma chamber, which I think was just like some huge source of energy or something. It was round about here that he ate RC whole. And that would have been bad enough, apart from the fact that she had little Spike Witwicky in her head, before he ran into Fortress Maximus, whom he overpowered initially, before Lord Zarak made the mistake of mentioning Buster Witwicky's kid, which pissed him off monumentally and prompted a spectacular fight back, which turned the tables, before he eventually tried to escape in city mode. I love seeing the whole city blasting off into space like this, before getting caught by a flailing strand of plasma energy, and being sent spinning, careening into space. Oh no! And you know what, I still can't get my head around this, but apparently this was his only appearance in Gen 1. I could have sworn there was more. But despite the lack of screen time, he had so many distinctive features that earned him a place in people's minds. These horn-type things on the side of his head that became the mandibles in the Scorpion mode, the tail stinger that could not only impale people but also blast a fucking laser beam, the shoulder cannons, missiles that came out of his chest, I think, and the huge claw hands, and you'll see how brutal they can be later in the vid. In the Marvel comics, he took command of the Decepticons in Megatron's absence, where he attacked and leveled a whole Autobot city. Pretty safe to assume there was some innocence in that body count. Then, once the Autobot survivors had been rounded up, he wanted to drop them into a smelting pool. But, luckily, Fortress Maximus and a team of Autobots drove off Scorponok's team.
Then,
annoyed at the ineffectiveness of his collaborators, the Nebulans, he discussed a variety of ways of getting rid of them, including trapping them in these bubbles that would then float away into space. And isn't that the dream? Just to watch your problems float away serenely, never to be seen again. Oh, I mean, these are people we're talking about here. In this continuity, it was him that invented the Pretenders. After making his way to Earth, he established a base and finally managed to meld flesh and metal together to create a being that seamlessly blends in with the planet's native life forms. Yeah, check out this guy, totally seamlessly. This caused the Autobots to create their own Pretenders. Totally seamlessly. It was round about here that Scorponok first met Optimus Prime, in virtual reality no less. Like, I know Zuckerberg's metaverse is kind of a weird place, but oh, cool avatar. I like your avatar. I like your avatar. Die, Autobot! Basically, after Optimus died, he became an energy being that lived inside of a computer and didn't really realize that he was anything but a computer program. So Scorponok went in, tried to kill him, before this dude hit him with a data surge and forced him back into his own body. It turned out that Scorponok was behind the funding of the Z Foundation, an organization dedicated to the eradication of all Transformers on Earth. They would offer dead or alive bounties on the heads of Transformers, as well as generally seeding anti-Cybertronian dissent among Earth's human population, in an effort to generally turn people against the Autobots. He ordered two of his troops, Carnivac and Snarler, to murder Spike Witwicky, just to get revenge on its old enemy Fortress Maximus. You see, Spike was the one who was binary bonded to Fort Max. And after that, he made a truce with Optimus in the face of the greater evil of Unicron,
which can devour entire planets.
Do you have to stand that close? Apparently Shockwave didn't get the memo though, as his faction suddenly attacked, and Scorponok battled Shockwave pretty evenly until Shockwave ultimately got the better of him. And had it not been for this chick called Circuit Breaker's intervention, I think Shockwave would have killed him. Circuit Breaker was part of this superhero group, I can't remember their name. Was it Overlords or something like that? Anyway, round about this stage there was definitely some kind of bond between Optimus and Scorponok, as Scorponok would later confide in Prime and tell him all about how he was afraid of dying, and later that he would be proud to die alongside Optimus. And during the battle, he had the chance to leave Optimus to die, but opted to save him. And then, in true Decepticon fashion, wanted to crush his attacker's head. This will be the first of, a few heads that Scorponok is gonna crush, or try to crush. I'm squishing your head, I'm squishing your head. What was that from? Anyone remember that? Just me? As you might have guessed, this moment of friendship was like a foreshadowing for Scorponok's death, as he was caught in a stream of Unicron's fire, or bath, I'm not sure which, and had his face melted. And his last words to Optimus were, "Did I do good?" Like as if he'd had one more breath in his body, he would have gone, "Dad."
Why do they all do the dad thing?
Regeneration 1 expanded on him actually being a highly intelligent scientist, with Zarak again bringing his scientific know-how into the equation. Anyway, in this one his main rival was Grimlock, where he started off by ambushing and kidnapping him before pressuring him into joining him as he attempted to rewrite the entire evolutionary path of the Cybertronian race. Basically, he would give the Dinobots new, more powerful bodies in return for their services. I think their current bodies were contaminated with nucleon or something. As he messed around with a device called the Gene Key that could rewrite the CNA of Cybertronians and effectively turn Autobots into Decepticons, and as he put it, remake Cybertron in his image. He sent Grimmy to use the Gene Key on Perceptor, who turned into a Decepticon and joined Scorponok's cause before trying the Gene Key on Brainstorm, Hardhead, and Highbrow, who promptly attacked Grimlock, although he managed to fight them off with his shiny new, more powerful body. He crushed Misfire's head for questioning orders, and when it turned out that this one Autobot called Punch was immune to the effects of the Gene Key, Scorponok ordered Grimlock to execute him. Grimlock refused and turned on Scorponok though, but it turned out that Scorponok had a failsafe built into Grimmy's new body, some kind of crystal that allowed him control over the body. Anyway, after that, he unveiled the fact that he'd had Perceptor working on a huge version of the Gene Key, positioned in a canyon to amplify its signal enough to contaminate the whole of Cybertron at once and rewrite all of the Autobots at once. In Scorponok's mind, it was a twisted take on Primus's vision of unity for all of Cybertron, and he thought that he would get a reward from Primus for being the architect of peace. When Perceptor suggested that maybe conflict was in Primus's plan, Scorponok had to hold himself back from killing the little brainbot, having to remind himself that he was no longer the rageful creature of destruction that he once was, which he demonstrated just a short while later when the Gene Key had a technical issue and he flew into a rage and knocked Roadblock into the canyon. Like the guy was just standing there and Scorponok was like, "Hey, what are you looking at, bonk?" Scorponok's master plan was foiled by Perceptor, who as it turned out was never turned evil by Grimlock in the first place and was just pretending to go along with the plan all along. Grimlock and Scorponok both went for each other's jugulars, and it was kind of a stalemate as they both fell into the canyon, ripping chunks out of each other all the way to the bottom. Later in the 2005 IDW continuity, he was a 0.1%er, kind of like Overlord and Tarn, and originally a gladiator from the Cybertronian city of Kaon. He joined the Decepticons in a bid to see the strong rule over the weak, which actually contrasted with Megatron's own view if you think about it, because he wanted to create a more equal society. Before, the tyranny of power kicked in, that is. Taking advantage of Megatron's weakened state after a battle with Optimus, he blasted Megatron out of an airlock, with a little encouragement from Starscream. Damn, look at that, he's literally holding the door open. Megatron survived, but was marooned on planet Junkion. And with Megatron out of the way, Scorponok intimidated the other Decepticons into following him. Like, it really seems that many didn't want to do it voluntarily. With his coup complete, he staged an operation to take the Toro Axis Mega Refinery. This place was one of Cybertron's largest sources of energon, and one of its last. By taking this place, he would force everybody else to devote a large part of their time fighting over the scraps. And there he came across his old rival Grimlock, and the two battled, until Grimlock took a new form as a cybermorphic predator and overwhelmed him. Oh no, he cut off his pincers! How's he gonna smush them heads? In retaliation, Scorponok blew up the whole refinery, an act that killed thousands of Cybertronians. At least all of the ones who forgot to wear their plot armor. Scorponok and the rest of the main guys, they were fine. He then crushed another guy's head for not wanting to scavenge the bodies of the dead like he was ordered to. Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, he ordered that the already devastated area around the Toro Axis refinery be carpet bombed as the Autobots had discovered that Trypticon lay dormant underneath it. So he ordered the bombing campaign to awaken the Titan, who he hoped would cleanse the area and later all of Cybertron. As he was watching Trypticon's rampage from a distance, however, he was summoned by Starscream, who led him to none other than Megatron, who had returned from his exiles and was in no mood to dick around. Scorponok tried to crawl away, he begged for mercy, and technically Megatron granted it by not killing him, but throwing him to the Terracons to feed upon, without actually killing him to be kept in agony for the rest of his life. You can't say he didn't deserve it. I guess he escaped after this though, because he was next seen making super happy friends with technologically advanced aliens, developing new hybrid technologies with them, and then killing them off for their troubles. And making off with the tech. Thank you. During this time, he wound up on the DJD's kill list and on Ultra Magnus's hit list. Magnus eventually caught up with him, and in a skirmish, Scorponok got shot in the head. A non-lethal shot to the head, of course, before managing to escape. He wasn't really able to repair himself though, and he ended up on Earth as just like this head with an eyeball hanging out and like all cables keeping him alive and stuff. And he had to enlist some dude called Abraham. Abraham Lincoln? No, that would be stupid. Abraham Dante. Abraham Dante's Inferno? No, that would be stupid. And enlisted him to do his dirty bidding.
Dirty bidding?
Yes! For example, founding an organization called the Machination, whose main goal was to basically create the Headmaster's program. Remember, in this continuity, it hadn't been created yet. So that cybernetically enhanced humans could control Cybertronian bodies. But before Scorponok would test it on himself, he needed a guinea pig. So he sent out his dirty bidding buddies to kidnap Sunstreaker and his squishy Humie Hunter Onion. And these dirty bidding buddies did some forcible binary bonding. Bonded them up good, binarily, forcibly, irreversibly. What now? As well as using him as a template for a bunch of Sunstreaker clones, who were all networked through Sunstreaker's original head, which must have been the most horrific nightmare for the yellow bot that he just couldn't wake up from. Scorponok bonded with Abraham Dante's Inferno, and he became like a stand-in head, whilst his real head sat in a warehouse somewhere. Controlling the body, I guess? Don't know. Anyway, when he got back on his feet again, Scorponok was soon trying to forge an alliance with Grimlock again. But when the Dinobot refused, Scorponok with his headmaster powers flattened poor Grimmy, who only avoided having his head crushed off because Skyfire teleported him out of there, before manipulating the Dinobots and using them to stage an attack that would see him and his Sunstreaker clones saving the day to win lucrative security contracts from the US government to defend the skies and police the Earth from extraterrestrial life. And when that all failed, he beat Hot Rod half to death out of frustration, clobbering him with a steel girder and then, oh my god, crushing his legs with his pincers and then crushing his head. No, wait, actually he didn't crush his head at this point, but just wait. There's something really brutal about the way this is drawn. Like the girder hit took half of Hot Rod's face off and the leg is just completely mangled. Still didn't stop Hot Rod from talking smack though. So we lost control of the Dinobots, and the Autobot Monsterbots arrived and tipped the scales in favor of the Autobots. I'll go more into the Monsterbots when I do my All Factions video, but again, that's a long list, so you know, better not hold your breath. Anyway, after that, Scorponok blasted Sunstreaker through the chest, as if he hadn't put this guy through enough torture already, just as he was about to find his real head. He'd been searching for this thing for ages. Anyway, Scorponok sent all of his clones after the Dinobots, but Hunter severed the connection and deactivated Sunstreaker's head, which sent them all into like this multi-car pileup. Scorponok blasted the stuffing out of Sludge, killing him, and was about to take out all of his rage and frustrations on Grimlock. But look who showed up to get in the way. And this is kind of like a weird move from Shockwave, like a guy who puts logic above everything. Surely logic would dictate that dead is dead, and if Grimlock is dead, then revenge accomplished, no? Like, who cares who kills him? Anyway, so even though Grimlock is there for the taking, these two start fighting each other. Shockwave brings up an interesting point about the Headmaster process in the middle of all this though. Like, the Headmaster process does increase certain abilities, in this case increasing his reaction time, according to Shockwave by a whopping 60%. Woo! But it also adds an emotional element into the mix too. Fear, basically. And that reduces what he calls operational efficiency, which gives Shockwave the slimmest of advantages to get the better of Scorponok. So Scorponok yields and Shockwave allows him to retreat. The broken and bruised Hot Rod manages to escape and wanted to take out Scorponok's real head, but Scorponok showed up and started beating yet more crap out of him, and yes, he is about to crush his head with his pincers, before Swoop severed the connection to his head, which finally brought the big guy down to be arrested by Ultra Magnus, who then began dismantling the Machination's organization across Earth. Like a lot of Cybertron's worst of the worst, Scorponok would end up in the notorious prison on Garrus 9, which, as I'm sure you know, got taken over by Overlord. It was here that he got a new head and a smaller body. And I guess we gotta talk about the size inconsistency right here, because I think with this character, like, he's one of the worst offenders. Like, at first he was the size of a small city or a base, and now he's no bigger than any bot. But, you know, at least there's a story reason for it, I guess. Some of these guys just change size because. And later they retconned in this thing called mass shifting, which was kind of like a flimsy excuse of like how the bots could actually control their size to make themselves bigger and smaller at will. But again, you know, kind of bullshit retcon really. Anyway, back to Scorponok in the prison. He was recruited by Shockwave to leave on his ship with him when Shockwave bargained to be released in exchange for freeing Overlord from this virus in his head that Megatron had put there as a failsafe. Hold on, was that confusing? Let me explain. Alright, basically, Shockwave and Scorponok in the prayers ruled over by Overlord. Overlord's got this virus in his head. Shockwave's like, I can remove that for you if you want, but you gotta give me a ship and a crew of my choosing. Shockwave chooses Scorponok. I choose you. And off they pop. So Scorponok leaves with Shockwave, but it turns out that Shockwave, being Shockwave, only wanted him along to be a bargaining chip. See, he knew that sooner or later the DJD would be showing up, so he figured he could give them a bunch of other bots from their kill list in exchange for letting him go. But Scorponok kind of saw through it and was like, nope, and blasted himself out of the airlock. Yoy! After which he was recruited by another one of the supervillains known only as the Grand Architect, and he became one of his trusted lieutenants. While serving under him, he helped run horrific experiments which created the Tricons and the Infinites, bots with the ability to naturally assume millions of alternate modes, as well as having massive self-repair facilities, able to heal themselves back even from death. He also helped create the ultimate weapon of doominess, called the God Gun, which was no cakewalk, let me tell you. They had to get 5 duplicate Cybertrons to blast into another universe in order to stop a threat. You know what? Check out my most ludicrous weapons vid if you want to know more about that. He kidnapped Grimlock again, this time because he had an artifact called the Magnificence. Scorponok strung him up, tortured him until he got the talisman off him, after which he dumped him in a tube on a World Sweeper starship. Scorponok worked in secret on a project of his own, some horrible Frankenstein scheme called Project Firstborn. His logic was that because Decepticons were fewer and fewer in numbers, like he reckoned there were fewer than 10,000 left at this point, and because they were so reliant on these randomly occurring spark hotspots, there was a pretty low number of new sparks coming into existence. And he could change all of this by transplanting sparks into these biological organisms and then letting them loose to procreate and kickstart a wave of reproduction. Then once the population had reached a certain size, he planned to harvest the spark back out of the biological bodies and have them put back into mechanical bodies. Another kind of genocide, I guess. He used the Magnificence to get the first volunteers for the program, I guess you would call it, from his own troops, no less. Then he mutated the crew of the Lost Light into Spark Eaters, after they were turned over to him by the treacherous Getaway. Getaway did this to prove his allegiance to the Grand Architect, who was the newest big bad in town. And how else are you going to prove your allegiance, Spark Eaters are these fearsome creatures that contract the intensity of their prey's spark energy. They're able to immobilize and kill Transformers without making physical contact through powers that seem to defy conventional explanation. Like this poor schmo who had his brain module pulled out through his mouth to deactivate him without harming the spark, which it then ripped out and devoured. Or on the Spark Eaters in my most powerful beings that aren't Autobots or Decepticons vid, so make sure you subscribe for that. Once consumed, the sparks linger in their abdomens and are slowly digested. Why Scorponok would do this, I don't exactly remember, but it seems a bit perplexing to me. Like, why would he create all these creatures that eat sparks when he needs them for his race of purple clones? I don't know, beats me. Then he beat up Rodimus again, and oh look, he's about to crush his head before being teleported away by Justice Tyrus. Then he sent a Geobomb, this small orb with the destructive capability to destroy an entire planet, to Mederi to push the moon into a transwarp warren and kickstart a time paradox that triggered the Grand Architect to begin his plan. And speaking of the Grand Architect, this whole storyline, Scorponok was getting more and more frustrated that he wasn't privy to the whole plan, or the Grand Architect's true identity. So he ordered Sunder, who had remote mind hack abilities, remember, to get stuck into his mind and find out the juicy truths. But not only did the Grand Architect resist the hack, but he robbed Sunder of his ability. And that wasn't the only punishment he dished out though, no. Check out what he did to Scorponok. And yeah, I think that was the last of Scorponok in IDW. Now, if the notion of a giant robotic scorpion wasn't terrifying enough for you, the Bayverse incarnation can burrow through bedrock at astonishingly high speeds. He's known to lay in wait underground to ambush his targets. Now, I was initially disappointed with this incarnation, but when you think of this guy as another character entirely, like completely unrelated to this guy, I do warm to it quite a bit. You gotta admit that he was really distinctive, like there's not another bot like him. And that's especially impressive as he didn't get a whole lot of screen time. Like in Revenge of the Fallen, he pretty much just had a cameo before he got his skull crushed by Jetfire. Anyway, you've all seen the movies, no doubt, so I won't get into great detail there, but in the movie tie-in comics, he was partnered with Blackout as part of a Cybertron defense force before the Civil War broke out. After they realized that the Allspark had left Cybertron and Megatron had followed in pursuit, Blackout deployed Scorponok to defuse an argument with Starscream, which would have no doubt developed into him taking control of everything. You know how he's always trying to slip in there. He helped to save Dreadwing in a space battle before massacring a whole army base in Afghanistan. I guess that's the one from the movie. Oh, if you've ever wondered what his robot mode looks like, I think I found one pic. Look at him. Oh, look at him. He cracked open a safe during a heist in the Creo cartoon when Galvatron, Spinister and he broke into a bank to steal the Energon inside, before he was splattered with melted cheese and captured. In the War for Cybertron Earthrise cartoon, the Scorponok were a group created by the Quintessence. The Quintessence mistreated them to the point that their home planet was destroyed, apart from this one space station that was home to the last Scorponok. He managed to survive this place even though it was stuck half in and half out of a malfunctioning space bridge. And he seemed obsessed with infestations, so I don't know what happened to him in his past. He was pretty damn powerful, and he tried to exterminate both the Autobots and the Decepticons, and they had to fight together to send him fleeing. I was always fascinated by this guy, you know, the idea of there being a whole race of these guys, but also just this one individual. Like, how did he come to be here? How come he never figured a way off the station? My theory is that, you know, the solitude just made him kind of crazy, and he just stayed on the space station, and he began to see it as his duty to stay on the space station to keep it free of this so-called infestation. Anyway, in the My Little Pony crossover, Scorponok was a Titan who was dug up by evil Pony King Sombra. This guy could control Transformers, and he possessed Scorponok and called himself King Sombronok. But unfortunately, his limited knowledge of Cybertronian systems left him open to the Ponzi's power of friendship and Megatron's party cannon, and he exploded from just all the friendship and happies. Let's look at the beast incarnations of Scorponok now. When I first saw Beast Wars when I was a kid, I kind of saw him as just another one of Megatron's muscle guys. You know, not too bright, but compared to the other cons, he's actually one of Megatron's most loyal. He's still kind of dumb though. Like, he gets outwitted by Waspinator, for God's sake. After Dinobot defected to the Maximals, Scorponok gets a field promotion, but that doesn't really seem to earn him any more in the way of respect.
I'm second in command!
As he's often seen being bossed around by the other cons.
You will take the cannon back, and I will see to Optimus. You hear me? Tarantulas?
He got blasted to oblivion by Rhinox's megafart.
Oh, no, not that.
And he does occasionally develop these viruses that he delivers with his Cyber Bee drone. Although if I remember correctly, that one kind of went wrong too. It was meant to make Optimus Primal a shivering coward, but actually turned him into a raging lunatic. But other than that, this incarnation of the character doesn't really do much of note, and was killed off at the end of the first season, I think. War for Cybertron Kingdom took the character and made him once again like a whole army who traveled with Beast Megatron's crew, and waves of these guys attacked Black Arachnia and Airraiser as they were trying to hack the Nemesis' computers. Again, not a lot more info is given, but it has been suggested that this guy might be a clone, and the Predacons used the same tech that they used to make this non-transforming Dinobot clone to create themselves an army. It's also possible that this guy wasn't the last of his race and somehow evolved into this over time. Remember, these guys were from the future.
To introduce myself, I am Scorponok.
In the Energon cartoon, he didn't start off as Scorponok at all. He started off as the Grand Chamberlain of Planet Q, which, when faced with destruction at the hands of Unicron, he blew up to try and end the Planet Killer, sacrificing himself in the process. When Alpha Q resurrected him to become the leader of his army, he was given a sword forged from Megatron's spark, which he would use as a symbol to bring bots to his cause and grow the army.
Let's see what this sword can do.
He attacked numerous cities, Desert City, Plain City, and others, and mined all of the Energon out of a planet called Iron Planet, which led to its destruction. He inadvertently brought Megatron back from the dead when he stabbed his corpse with a sword made from his spark, and got beaten half to death for his trouble. He helped push fake meteors into Earth's vicinity to rain down rocky fear and chaos on the Earthlings and the Autobots, and then he beat down Ironhide just to judge whether he was worthy of an alliance. Ironhide would grow to admire Scorponok though, and the two would kind of become these kind of weird friends but not friends. You know, I don't know. He left the Autobot Inferno to fall into a star, and in the Cybertron comic, he was brought back from the dead as Dark Scorponok. You see, Unicron used a reality-altering black hole to make him into this vile creature who would roam looking for sparks to devour. He was like an addict. His need for sparks hurt him. He was lured into battle with Vector Prime and Sentinel Maximus, where he almost defeated them both, but he was finally brought down by the shredding of several gun turrets. His backstory in Robots in Disguise told of a bot that would attack and pillage innocent communities just for the funsies, specifically choosing the ones that were too far away from any kind of law enforcement. He was captured eventually though and put into a stasis pod and loaded onto a ship called the Alchemor, which crash landed on Earth, and with the help of Glowstrike and Saberhorn, he overthrew the prison guards and enslaved them. He eventually got his comeuppance though when he got into a fight with Grimlock, and at first he dominated. But after being distracted by Bumblebee, Grimlock got the better of him and he was shoved back into a stasis pod and eventually taken back to Cybertron by Optimus. In Rise of the Beasts, he again was not really an individual but a whole army of henchmen who'd be sent in ahead of Scourge to soften up a planet, minimizing resistance and making ready for eventual consumption by Unicron. I'm guessing that Scourge would deal with the planet's leadership and the Scorponoks would deal with the mass numbers of population. Genocide, basically. And that's exactly what happened to Maximal Planet, and that's how it got destroyed. There isn't a whole lot of detail in the character in the movie, like I don't think it's even clear if he's really a Predacon or not, but he is called in as reinforcements during the climactic battle when the armies of Freezers are struggling against the Autobots. That's when Unicron releases all of those eggs which turn into our guy when they hit the ground. It's a shame actually, because I felt they were reduced to fodder in a way, pretty much. Like every time you see one, it's getting eviscerated or dismembered. They did look very cool though. And speaking of how they look, it's got more than a passing resemblance to the Bayverse version, don't you think? I would have loved to have seen like one big one that one of the main characters would have faced off with, and that would have given them a bit more of a challenge. Okay, you guys, let's leave that there for now. I gotta take my meds and hit the sack. Keep an eye on my gaming channel as I've just started playing through the Cybertron games, and then I'm gonna do Reactivate and maybe some Forge to Fight. I'm working on most powerful Transformers factions and most powerful beings that aren't Autobots or Decepticons, and I might do a few more Rise of the Beast vids too, although they don't seem to do all that well on my channel, so we'll see. Anyway, loads and loads and loads of stuff to look forward to, so let me just say a huge thank you for all the support you give this channel. If you want to help me keep making these vids, check out my Buy Me a Coffee page, and I will see you very soon for the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and cheerio, bye!